Most preppers are solving the wrong problem. They're buying food with expiration dates and calling it a reserve. And when the emergency outlasts the pantry, that distinction becomes fatal. Veterans don't stockpile by data, they stockpile by chemistry. 10 specific items that do not expire, available at any grocery store within 20 miles of you, with exact shelf life, exact specification, and exact caloric density for each. One of them sits in the baking aisle. You've held it 100 times. Almost nobody knows it's been used as a field preservation compound since before refrigeration existed. Walk to the baking or condiment aisle and look for raw honey, not blended, not a honey product, not the bear-shaped plastic bottle that says pure in big letters on the front. The word raw needs to be on the label. Glass jar is preferred, though plastic works fine. Grabbing whatever honey sits at the lowest price point is a mistake most people make, and what they're actually storing is a product with 30 to 40% moisture content that ferments within a year. Raw honey, unheated, unfiltered, water activity at or below 0.6, produces conditions where bacteria, yeast, and mold cannot survive. Archaeologists have pulled edible honey from Egyptian tombs sealed 3,000 years ago, and that isn't folklore. It's water activity chemistry in action. At a water activity of 0.6 or below, there's insufficient free moisture for spoilage organisms to reproduce, and the caloric density comes in at roughly 304 calories per 100 grams, with the added function of topical antimicrobial use when your pharmacy isn't available. During the 2020 COVID supply chain collapse, processed food items cleared store shelves within 72 hours in major metro areas, while raw honey stayed on shelves weeks longer. Availability inversely tracks how well the general population understands what they're actually buying. Head to the grain aisle or the bulk section if your store carries one, and skip the standard paper bag entirely. What you need is rice already sealed in a mylar pouch or food-grade bucket, or you seal it yourself with oxygen absorbers within 24 hours of purchase. The bag on the shelf is a starting point, not a storage solution. And the distinction between those two things is the difference between a food system and a rotation problem. Most people buy rice in a paper bag, put it in a cabinet, and 18 months later they're dealing with weevils. A 300cc oxygen absorber per gallon of rice, sealed mylar, and a dated container changes the outcome entirely. White rice, not brown, which retains oil and goes rancid, stores for 20 to 30 years under those conditions. At 365 calories per 100 grams, dry weight, roughly 3.5 pounds per sealed gallon. During the 11-month grid failure after Hurricane Maria, families with sealed dry grain stores maintained caloric baseline, while families dependent on refrigerated or short shelf goods ran out of options in weeks. That's the operational record, not a theory. Next, the spice or baking aisle. Plain, non-iodized salt, not sea salt. Not Himalayan pink, not iodized table salt for this application. Bulk bags, 4 to 5 pounds minimum, because what you're buying is preservation capacity, not dietary supplementation. Here's the dependency chain most people miss entirely. No salt means no preservation capability. No preservation capability means no extended meat storage, and no extended meat storage means your protein baseline collapses to whatever sealed grains you have. Immune degradation follows within weeks after that, and nutritional science is clear on that timeline. A 26-ounce canister sitting in the cabinet is a condiment. 5 pounds of salt at under $5 gives you the ability to brine, cure, and pack meat using methods documented for centuries before refrigeration existed. Sodium chloride doesn't degrade. Stored dry and away from moisture, and its caloric value is 0, while its survival multiplier value is irreplaceable. During the siege of Sarajevo, 1992 to 1996, the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare, preserved foods became primary caloric sources, and salt's role in that 4-year operational record is thoroughly documented. The spirits section comes next, and the specific variety doesn't matter. What matters is proof. 80 proof minimum, meaning 40% ethanol by volume, and this isn't a comfort purchase. Ethanol at 40% concentration functions as a wound antiseptic, a surface and instrument disinfectant, and a fire accelerant in wet conditions when other ignition methods fail. Beyond that, it's the most universally accepted barter commodity documented in grid-down events, more stable in perceived value than currency. Shelf life is indefinite when sealed, and once opened, evaporation is the only degradation mechanism. The water percentage changes while the ethanol stays stable. At $15 to $25 per bottle, that's chemistry, not a lifestyle choice. Dried lentils or split peas from the bulk grain aisle, not canned, not pre-seasoned, not buried in a soup mix. Raw and dry transferred to a sealed container with an oxygen absorber within 24 hours. Canned beans are heavy, sodium-loaded, and gone in a week if relied upon as a primary source, while dried legumes sealed in oxygen-free conditions store for 25 to 30 years at under $2 a pound. Lentils need no soaking, which shortens cooking time compared to other legumes. And both lentils and split peas deliver roughly 25 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight combined with rice. They form a complete amino acid profile, and that's not a dietitian's suggestion. That's the nutritional science behind every field ration system that has sustained a military force beyond 72 hours. 5 pounds run $1.80 to $2.50 and provides approximately 8,000 calories at 352 calories per 100 grams dry. During Hurricane Harvey in 2017, grocery shelves in Houston cleared within hours of the storm's upgraded forecast. Water, bread, and standard shelf-stable goods were gone before landfall, while dry legumes cleared later than chips and canned soup. That's a procurement window, and recognizing it is the difference between having supplies and not having them. Coffee aisle, vacuum-sealed tin, not a glass jar with a foil pull tab, not ground coffee in a bag, a tin can with a sealed lid, an instant rather than ground, because ground coffee oxidizes rapidly once opened. Opened ground coffee degrades in 2 weeks. Sealed whole bean runs 8 to 12 months, and neither is a grid-down supply. Vacuum-sealed instant in a tin, used methodically after opening, stays viable for 2 to 20 years depending on storage conditions. Caffeine is a performance compound, not a preference, and within 72 hours of withdrawal, habituated individuals show measurable decline in cognitive performance, reaction time, and decision-making under stress. That's an operational readiness issue. A vacuum-sealed tin at $8 to $15, stored with an oxygen absorber once opened, produces a functional 60 to 70 milligrams of caffeine per 2 grams serving. Raw apple cider vinegar with the mother from the condiments aisle, the cloudy sediment at the bottom of the bottle is the active bacterial culture, and that's the specification that matters here. Distilled white vinegar has its uses, but raw ACV with the mother is a fermented compound with documented antimicrobial, antifungal, and digestive support properties that also functions as a food preservation acid. Acetic acid at 5 to 6% concentration drops pH below 4.6, which inhibits Clostridium botulinum growth. That's botulism prevention, chemistry. Relevant the moment your refrigeration is gone and you're preserving produce or foraged food. A quart runs $3 to $6, shelf life is indefinite, sealed, and opened it retains full potency for years due to acidic stability. Cheese wax. A 1 pound block, red or black, from the specialty food section or ordered online, since not every store carries it. Hard cheeses were transported and stored without refrigeration for centuries using wax sealing, because the wax eliminates oxygen exposure, and without oxygen there's no aerobic bacterial growth. Properly wax-sealed hard cheese stores at room temperature for up to 25 years, and that's documented in cheese-making literature and commercial-aged cheese operations, not a product claim. 1 pound of wax seals multiple cheese blocks, giving you a self-stable fat and protein source at 400 plus calories per 100 grams and 25 grams of protein per 100 grams for $8 to $12 per pound of wax. Now, the one from the baking aisle mentioned at the start, cream of tartar. Every person who has ever made a meringue or stabilized whipped cream has held this jar, and almost nobody knows what it actually is. Cream of tartar is potassium bitartarate, a naturally occurring acid salt deposited on the inside of wine barrels during fermentation and then crystallized and refined. What looks like a baking ingredient is actually an indefinite shelf life acidulant with documented history as a food preservative, a cleaning compound, a natural antifungal agent, and a leavening activator that functions without refrigeration, yeast, or external chemistry. Combined with baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, it produces carbon dioxide, which means functional leavening for bread when the supply chain has been gone for 6 months. It also acts as a stabilizer and pH control agent when fermenting or preserving food, extending the useful life of your preservation processes while stored goods are being actively consumed. At $4 to $6 for a standard jar, it's the item that separates a pantry from a system. During the siege of Sarajevo, documented improvised food production inside the city included rooftop gardens and improvised alternatives to conventional cooking ingredients as supply chains collapsed within months. And the people who understood the chemistry of what they were working with consistently survived longer on less. Last item, plain rolled oats from the grain or cereal aisle. Not quick oats, not flavored. Instant packets, bulk if available. Transferred immediately to Mylar with an oxygen absorber, or purchased already sealed in a food-grade bucket. The same oats that last 12 to 18 months in a cardboard canister lasts 25 to 30 years sealed in oxygen-free Mylar. Same grain, different chemistry, and the canister is a retail container, not a storage vessel. Rolled oats comes in at 389 calories per 100 grams dry, 13 grams of protein, 10 grams of fiber, with a fat profile that stays stable under oxygen-free storage because processing has already reduced the oil content that causes rancidity. Combined with sealed rice and lentils, you now have caloric baseline, complete protein, and dietary fiber covered for decades. A 5-gallon sealed bucket holds roughly 20 pounds, approximately 35,000 calories at $1.50 to $2 per pound in bulk. During the 2021 Texas grid failure, 4.5 million homes lost power. 246 people died, and families without shelf-stable dry food stores depleted their options within 72 hours while grocery supply chains took days to normalize. The gap between preparation and crisis is always shorter than anyone projects. Shelf life is a chemistry outcome, not a product feature, and every item on this list works because of what it is at a molecular level. Most people will close this out, search survival food on Amazon, and buy a $200 freeze-dried kit in branded pouches. And that's fine, because this wasn't built for most people. Subscribe.